Hi, I'm Pastor Horton. Welcome to this week's interview where we have Mr. Jonathan McLernon. So great to have you. Welcome in.
Thank you for having me. And you nailed the last name on the first time, and I didn't even tell you how to pronounce it.
Woo! I'm
So
glad. I
that's
forgot to ask,
yeah,
but yeah. Um,
that's all
so
good.
so we talked a little bit before about your testimony, which still has my brain kind of rattled because it's just so incredible. But do you mind sharing that
Uh,
with everybody so we can hear it again?
yeah, and I'll just for everyone listening, I'm going to give you the condensed version for the sake of time because I could probably spend about 6 hours giving you real testimony. But we're gonna give you a brief overview, and that's going to give you an opportunity to sort of dive in and ask some questions, and explore some facets of it you'd like to hear more. So I was born and raised in a fellowship called, often referred to as the Two by Twos. They're sort of a fundamentalist, I'll call it high control Christian group. It's not that people like to call us a cult. I disagree with that terminology. However, I understand where it comes from. It started in 1897. A guy named William Irvine basically decided to go out in faith on his bicycle and see if people just knew and preach the gospel, and then decided he wanted to create sort of an institution to escape the legalism of um, the churches of the day and try basically start something more faith based. And so, model after New Testament church, meet in homes, go out in communities, have tent missions, stuff like that. Nowadays, it's a little more modern. You know, we have like buildings and things like that, but we don't really maintain a church hierarchy and stuff like that. Anyways, so that's the organization. So you can look up two by twos. If you do look them up, you're going to find that they're under FBI investigation, though. So there's a little nugget to make things fun. So
Oh
I'm
yeah.
raised in that. Yeah, yeah. It wasn't until I was about 14 that I decided to commit my life to God and decide this is what I really want. I heard the voice of God earlier, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. At 16, I was baptized, so I was really going to commit my life to God. And as I said in our chat offline, that's when the fun starts. It seems like when you decide I'm really going to get serious about my walk with God, the devil goes, I'm going to get really serious about trying to
Oh
send this
yeah.
guy off the rails. And so uh, that kind of got me into, I graduated high school, went to university, moved a number of hours away. I was a chemistry major, so a nanotech researcher, and but also like to sort of covertly party. Um, much to, the funny thing is I still had a conscience. I was kind of ashamed of like the lifestyle I was living, yet I was still living the lifestyle. I do
Hmm.
the things I don't want to, and I don't do the things I want to. Isn't that the ever present human struggle?
Oh yeah.
There was a point in time in my life where I was in a party and I just kind of looked around and said, "Is this it? Is this everything you have to give me? 21 years old, partying should be the time of my life," and I felt empty on the inside. So I made a decision that I'm not gonna live this lifestyle anymore. And so it's kind of like I recommitted my life to God. And about a year later, a girl came into my life who eventually would become my wife, and we've now been married for over 20 years. Um, the details of that story we can maybe explore another time, but it was
Hmm.
a bit of a random setup. My wife's from Australia. I'm from Canada. It was a random setup that turned into a romance that blossomed into a 20-year marriage with a couple kids. Um,
Amen.
I was also in the Navy at the time she met me, and so after being in the Navy, we decided to travel the world for a couple of years. Just got tired of me being gone all the time, and at that point in time, I went through an experience when we were living in South Africa. I was violently assaulted, nearly murdered. That messed with my head, messed with my faith, messed with my mental health, messed with my physical health, and it was a long journey back to health. But ultimately got me to the place that I am today, doing what I do. We'll just throw one more detail in there I forgot to mention. You might have seen it in my bio. Lost everything in business as well. So I had a friend and brother in Christ betray me and lost all of my life savings, that kind of thing. And one thing that's not in my bio is 3 years ago I had a crippling injury. So after losing 120 pounds, getting healthy, building a business around the guy who rebuilt his life, having a crippling freak cycling accident that to this day I'm still recovering from. So never a dull moment in life. So there you go.
Oh
That's the coconut sized nutshell. Where do we want to enter it and go deeper?
yeah. Uh, so to everybody listening, you see what I mean? I mean, yeah, it's an incredible story, but wow. I don't think Hollywood
Yeah.
could come up with a better story.
Oh,
Um,
I usually tell people, look, if you told me like, oh, I forgot to mention, I was also born at 26 weeks, so I nearly died. I wasn't expected to live. I joked that I was a failure of 1980s birth control. My mom had an IUD. I was still conceived, and they're hoping for a girl because they already had a boy. Instead, they got me. Hello. chaos incarnate.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
trust me,
So,
I was a twin born about 2.5 months premature, so I
oh
definitely,
man, yeah, yeah,
yeah, so I get that of like, hi, you didn't expect me. I'm here.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure you're a great blessing now, though. So,
Oh yeah, of course. Uh,
of course.
I'm also super humble. Um,
Yes, yes. That comes
so
with age and gray in the beard.
oh yeah, I don't have any of that yet, but I'm getting there.
Yeah,
So
young buck.
I I have to kind of empathize with the giving your life to Christ multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the feeling of emptiness. Now, you said you were kind of feeling empty at about 21 years old, and you
Hmm.
devoted your life to Christ. Well, I am 21, so I certainly hope that I don't start feeling empty, but there were a few times. The first time I was very young, I was probably like 10, 11, 12. Devoted my life to Christ. That fell off because, nah, you know, I'm like a teenager. I've got other stuff going on.
Yeah.
Well,
Other things are
then,
grabbing your attention. You grew up in a different era than I did with like digital technology, right?
oh,
Instead
yeah,
of dot matrix Game Boys.
yeah, like, eesh, there's so much to pull away. And I really feel
Yeah.
bad for kids these days because they have so much pulling away from their faith.
Mm-hmm.
The second time was uh I found a girl that I really liked, wanted to
Yeah.
date, and she said, "Oh, I'll only date a Christian." So I said, what the heck? And so
Yeah.
gave my life to Christ, but for the wrong reasons. When that relationship failed, so did my relationship with Christ. And
Yeah.
then, oh, almost a year ago, um, I started this whole thing, uh, which thank God. But I redevoted my life to Christ, and here I am. And I want to point out the shame never goes away. I mean, I'm still a sinner,
Mm-hmm.
and I still do sin, and I hate it, and I'm ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
But I said a quote that, there's those quotes that they're so profound you don't even realize what you just said until like 10 minutes later. And I said it to a pastor, and I said, we don't sin, or we're not sinners because because we sin. We sin because we're sinners. And
Mm-hmm.
I just
Yeah.
walked away from that, didn't realize what I said, and then came back to it and I was like, oh, that was really profound. But like,
Yeah.
the when we were talking before, you went more in detail about that party that you were at,
Mm.
and I don't know if you are comfortable sharing more about that, but um
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was living in sin, right? I was living in a relationship that I shouldn't have been living in. I was fornicating. I was drinking. I was basically just living a wild, indulgent, hedonistic lifestyle. Because, and maybe I needed to experience that. Maybe I would have always wondered about it if I didn't.
mhm.
That's not a justification. Please don't take that as an excuse to do it. I would
No,
take it
no.
back. That's something I would take back if I could, but I can't, unfortunately. But the sort of, I'll call it the pinnacle of human experience in theory, being with a girl, being at a party, um, and finding out that actually this is not everything. Like I just actually feel empty inside. It shouldn't come as a surprise because Jesus told us about this. He said, I'll say, for example, the woman at the well, the way he talked to her, he was very compassionate. He said, I'm going to paraphrase it here, but I imagine it went something a bit like, I understand why you're doing what you're doing. Doesn't mean it's okay, doesn't mean it's good, but you're trying to meet a need,
Mhm.
and you're not going to be able to do it with the way that you're choosing to live.
No.
But I'm going to offer you something better. I'm not just going to say go and try to figure this out on your own. I'm going to offer you something better, and but you're going to have to make a step in faith and break free from that. So show me that you're willing. Um, we do have to make trades. If we're going to give our life to
Mhm.
Christ, it's going to involve trading some things. But we're always trading up. And,
Yeah.
as cliche as that sounds, but it was just this absolute emptiness. I had another moment in time, though. That was when I nearly died,
Hmm.
and I'm not the only one that's nearly died in life. I'm sure many people have had experiences, but for me, they say your life kind of flashes before your eyes, and it in a sense, yeah, it was like if I died that night, I didn't feel like I was saved. And I think about like the quote from Daniel in Daniel 5, like you've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. In this case here, it was like you're a Christian in your brain, but not in your heart. And it doesn't really matter how smart we are because our wisdom is the drop in the bucket compared to, or drop in the ocean, or all of the oceans, or a drop of water in all of the universe, whatever analogy you want to use to talk about God. And I said, I got a pretty good brain. I got it free of charge. I can't take the credit for it. But it really didn't matter how smart I was. All it meant is I had a lamp. It didn't mean it had any oil in it. And so that's what he showed me. And my faith might have been in the fact that I had a lamp, not that I had any oil in it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, in my past, in the denomination that I still remain or still maintain some degree of affiliation with, um, a lot of people in that organization put their faith in the structure and the ministry. We meet like people did in the Old Testament days. I think that's a noble thing, but I don't think that's what saved you. The ministers try to go similar to the Matthew 10 commission. Is that required? That's very much debatable. In a sense, it's a noble idea. The problem is it's led to a whole bunch of abuse. But it seems like whenever you introduce a power hierarchy, there's an abuse. Whenever you introduce exclusivity doctrine, where, hey, if we kick you out, you go to hell, all of a sudden you have a power dynamic that's incredibly unfair. And it turns out human beings with power dynamics don't do very well.
No, they do not.
Um, they do not. Jesus is called servants, not lords. Um,
Hmm.
and sometimes we forget that as well. So God showed me there wasn't oil in my lamp, basically. But it didn't mean the next day I had oil in my lamp all of a sudden, because when we think about the five wise and the five foolish, we're going to go out and try and buy it. But it's like you can't actually. This isn't something you can buy. This is something that is like nurtured over time. And we kind of talked about this, the idea that this is a covenant relationship. Um, and this is a contract, sorry, not a contract relationship. So it's not something you can purchase. It's something that has already been purchased, and it's something that we cultivate over time. So I spent about a decade wrestling with my own mental health, trying to find my way out of the trauma of what happened to me, um, and rediscover what it actually means to walk with God. You talk about shame, and I wanted to circle back to that because it's interesting. In my work professionally, I'm a counselor. I do addictions counseling. I do health coaching. I do sleep and stress management coaching. I do a lot of work with people's nervous systems, background in neuroscience, psychology, fitness, nutrition, you name it. I do a lot of different things. But at the end of the
Wow.
day, I'm helping humans live better. And that's not to toot my own horn. I just mean I'm facilitating the process, right? Because that's really what I'm doing.
Yeah.
My gift is to see in people what they don't necessarily see in themselves. It's not that I'm psychic, I'm not clairvoyant, but I can kind of read people in a way that was probably very unsettling for me because I didn't know what this was. I didn't even feel comfortable with the idea of being like, oh, I have a gift. Like I was like, no, 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 I don't want this. Like whatever this is freaky, um, kind of thing. And maybe when I look back, I go, maybe this is partly why I sometimes did the dumb things I did. Like I was trying to run away from my calling. I've had 11 different professions. And
Wow.
it literally took like the failure of my business and the loss of everything, loss of my savings, loss of my investment, and a mountain of debt with like, now what am I going to do with my life? And it's like, well, maybe now you'll do the thing I'm finally pushing you to do. And
Yeah.
so I kind of ran away from this as a calling for most of my life until I literally had no other choice to do this. And it turns out when you do that and you give your gifts to God and say like, let me steward this, but with your guidance, not mine, things work out pretty good. I'm not trying to say I'm all of a sudden like wealthy and living the dream and like life is, I don't mean that. I just mean there's something settled about what I do. Um, that I feel like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I wonder why did I wait so long to get here, um, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
I was blessed. So it's funny, you talk about how you don't like reading people, or you didn't like reading people, it was unsettling. I kind of leaned into that.
mhm,
Because I do read people, and part of that was because I never did well socially. And so in being able to
interesting.
read people, I was like, whoa, I can fit in. But
Mhm,
fitting in is not good. I mean, Jesus didn't fit in and they crucified him. And
Hmm.
if we do fit in, more often than not, that leads to a sinful worldly life, which is
Hmm.
terribly unfortunate. And going back to that party, I mean, what you described, that sounds like every 21-year-old's dream. You're at a party, you're
Right.
drinking, you're fornicating, like, but
Hot
it left you,
girlfriend. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it left you empty though. And I think
Yeah.
of a sermon that I believe his name is Joshua Howerton. He is a pastor down in Texas. Wonderful. I love listening to him. And he was talking about buckets. And he was saying, well, okay, this bucket didn't work. So I'm going to change it out for this bucket. And this one didn't work. So I'm going to change it out for this one. And it just keeps going through like a dozen different buckets. And I laughed when he pulled out a KFC bucket, but that's that's part of his
Yeah,
point
that
is
sounds
like,
like great. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And he finally says, it's not about the bucket, it's the well. Which well are you
Right.
drawing from? And it blew my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
But like,
What a brilliant analogy. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I just love the way that he preaches. Um,
Mhm.
but going to professions, I mean, you said you had 11. I'm not quite old enough to have changed my profession that many times, but
Yeah. Just to give an idea, like with the way that I would define it is I spent at least 6 months in a specific role that was different from any other kind of professional role or designation that I had.
yeah,
Um, just to name a few, I had my own landscaping company. I was a nanotech researcher. I was a marine engineer. I was a traveling English teacher, oil field fracker, power line technician, nutrition supplement store owner, light oil field, hotshot, transit company, um, online nutrition coach, and now expanded into kind of what I do now. There's uh, there's a lot of
yeah,
things that I did, and you go like people would look at my resume and go like, "Hey, you just couldn't figure out what you wanted to do like when you grew up, hey, or something like that." It's like, well, my brain kind of sees the world through a different lens. I realize. And nowadays, the cool kids might call it like neurodivergent, and I don't wear it like a whatever, but I realize I do kind of see the world through a different lens, and I don't fit very well into boxes. I don't fit very well into like traditional employment. I want to yank my ears off and run away screaming, basically.
yeah.
And it's hard to explain unless you kind of know what I mean. If you know what I mean, you'll know it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it seems like I was kind of born to wander. My wife and I have traveled all over the world, and I don't say that to flex or to brag. I'm currently in Australia at the time of recording this, and I'm still looking forward to getting back to Canada and sleeping in my own bed. There is something about when you get gray in the beard, you're like, I just want to go home and sleep in my own bed.
Hmm.
Some of the glamour of travel does wear off. My wife's in Australia, so we come over here so our kids can get to know their grandparents over here and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just I didn't really fit into the traditional employment mold, and it turns out that that's not where I fit. Some people it's great. It's absolutely what you need. You need the structure. You need these kinds of things, and I like the idea that like always preach the gospel and when necessary use words. And
Hmm.
so we're called into places. We're not always called in to be overtly like pastors or ministers of things, but we're all in a sense ministers of the gospel because we carry the light of Christ in us. And so how we live our lives, I the organization I'm a part of, the two by twos, there's a lot of emphasis on like meekness and humility and quiet spirit and worthlessness and almost like self erasure. And I have a real problem with that. I mean, I always have, I've always been a bit of a black sheep, anyways. And it's not that I want to make it about myself at all, but I'm like, I was always told to basically shut up and sit in the corner. Don't overshadow people. Don't outshine this person. Just like whatever, whatever. My brain runs at a like way faster gear than most people's brains do. I didn't ask for it. It's just how it works.
Hmm.
Um, and so, a client will come to me, and within about 5 minutes, I've already figured out like the next 6 months. I can't explain how it happens; it just does. But I can't give them that whole plan because their brain actually can't integrate that level of information that rapidly. Um, and so I have to figure out how to sort of facilitate them down this path and be willing to make adjustments and so on. But the idea is, Jesus said, "A city set on a hill can't be hid. You don't light a candle and hide under a bushel. You are the light of the world. Let the world see your good works. But the key part is so they glorify your Father which is in heaven." Right.
Yes.
So the point is, the light that is in you points to God in heaven, not look how good I am. You know. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to circle back to the shame thing though, because I
Yes.
wrestled with like serious self-loathing and shame and misplaced humility. Um, I'm actually a world class coach. I've worked with like high level professionals. I've given presentations to major organizations, medical, pharmaceutical, whatever, all across North America. In a very tiny pond, I have some degree of name recognition. Outside of that, nobody knows who I am, and I don't care. Um, but the idea is, this doesn't make me special. It doesn't put me on a pedestal. It doesn't mean that somehow I'm better than you. We all stand as equals before Christ, right? But we are also given gifts. I like the parable of the talents. I know that talent is a currency, but I also like that it's talent. Well, this is great. What a wonderful turn of phrase. We are all gifted with something, and we're all
Mhm.
asked to do something with that, to be stewards of the gifts we're given, the life we're given, to not be fruitless. Well, that might mean you might have some degree of visibility. The city set on a hill. Hey, look, we're living in the age of AI. There's wars, there's rumors of wars, there's like destructive technology, there's like it's a crazy time. Like what world will my kids inherit if this age even goes on that long? It's kind of daunting to think about. And I'd be lying if I say it doesn't worry me sometimes. I'd love to tell you that, hey, my faith is so complete that I just walk through life on cloud nine, but I don't. I have worries, I have fears, I have struggles, I wrestle with a lot. My Substack's called Wrestling with Truth. And I think this is, and maybe this comes with being middle aged too, right? But there's a scary world out there, in a sense. But I am reassured that my faith in every institution that man has created is failing, whether that's education, science, medicine, even religion. And this doesn't mean I don't want to be a Christian. What I mean is religious institutions that have been set up as power hierarchies to control people, not to lead them to Christ, right? And finance, banking, like all these things we thought we could put our trust in, we can't. They're corrupt. They're failing us. And you know what? What also makes me shake my head a bit, and I sorry to pick on Americans, but Americans can really like put their faith in politicians, and
Oh
politicians
yeah.
will like use that. And I go, you're looking for the savior in the wrong spot. Jesus lived in a time when they put people to death for doing what he did, right?
Yeah.
We live in a time where people will be mean on social media. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we want to live. It was nice. It is wonderful. It is a privilege to live in a country that generally respects Christian values because our country's constitutions were essentially founded on Christian values.
Yeah.
I guarantee the Roman Empire wasn't.
No, they weren't.
They were doing all kinds of horrible things that would just turn our stomachs if we actually walked in the room and saw the things that were happening, and somehow we're surprised when it's been revealed that hey, it still happens today. The idea, though, is where do we put our faith? And we're allowed to have a light. So shame is a check engine light. Shame tells us something needs our attention, but shame
Yes.
shouldn't cripple us. So don't let your unworthiness become a cloak for unwillingness.
Yes. I love that. And I love that you used the word unworthy. So I'm in a
Mm,
leadership academy where I'm learning
yeah,
more about being a Christian leader. And
yeah.
one of the things we talked about just this past Thursday, which is 3 days ago, give or take,
Mm,
um, we talked about how our unworthiness and unrighteousness was traded for Jesus's worthiness and righteousness. And that's
mm,
not by anything that we did.
mm,
Caveat. We didn't do any specific action except have faith in Jesus.
mm,
It's it's really difficult to say, well, you don't have to do anything, and then say, oh, well, you have to put your faith in Jesus, because that's a thing you have to do. So it trips a
yeah.
lot of people up, but like you are not going out and doing anything. All you're doing is saying, Jesus, I have faith in you. And
Mm,
that's it. And then you have grace, and you have
mm,
grace through faith.
yeah. Well, we talked about this paradox, right?
Hmm.
You can't save yourself through your own merit. So Christianity is unique among all world religions, theologies, worldviews, belief systems, whatever. Every other one says, by your own merit, you earn your salvation in some
Yeah.
context. Atheists, who cares? Atheists collapse at moral relativism. Who cares? Um, yeah. By your efforts, you earn your salvation. Christianity says no matter how hard you try, you can't. And that's
Hmm.
a great thing because that's what makes it just and fair and equal is we are all unworthy. But unworthy does not mean worthless.
Yeah.
For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. Right? The famous verse, John, everyone likes to quote it. But anyways, We are not worthless. We are precious. We are created in God's image.
Mm-hmm.
We are given something from God Himself. And so, but the idea is, I cannot save a single soul, no matter how hard I try. I can't be like, oh, great, you're saved now. No, no, I can't do that work. That is not my work to do, anyways.
No.
Um, this is why the glory goes to God, because who saves, right?
God.
Who is the Savior, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's just fascinating to see that, and I've had discussions with people where they're like, "Oh, well, I've had a discussion with one person who said, "Well, I just don't think I can be a Christian because I don't think that I can be saved." Or it was a
Mm,
friend that I was
interesting.
talking to, and that friend, their partner, was saying that they couldn't be a Christian because they felt that they'd screwed up so badly. And I looked at them and I said, "Well, you're a Christian. You know as well as I do that's not true. But I can't talk to this person to talk them into it. Because I can only lead a horse to water. If I try to force it to drink, it'll drown. And that doesn't help
Yeah.
anybody."
So here's an interesting dilemma you might find yourself in, exactly like this,
Mm-hmm.
where you can see because you understand and your faith is firmly in the covenant relationship. So your faith is not in ourselves. Your faith is in God's character and Jesus' completed work.
Yeah.
But we still feel shame for our sin, and so we should. But this doesn't mean we should run and hide. For a lot of
No.
my life, let's say I would do something that I know is sinful, even willfully sin. That one really bugged me. Still does.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, it might be referred to as iniquity, justified sin in a sense. But um, ultimately, still, what matters most is the orientation of the heart. So let's just say I've been married to my wife for 20 years, and let's just say we have a fight, and I say some really mean things to my wife, and I walk out and I slam the door, and I just, does that mean my marriage is over? No,
No.
no. There's rupture, there's correction needed, but the relationship is a covenant relationship. It is not over because I screwed up. I go back and we make it right. Now, the relationship between Christ and the church is really interesting because marriage mirrors that in some context, right? It's
Yeah.
analogous to it, right? The relationship does not rupture because we've sinned. It ruptures because we orient our hearts to something else.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the literal questions I've been like working my way through recently. What if I die mid sin? What if I die with a wrong spirit? What if, it goes back to this idea of snapshot theology, right?
Mm-hmm.
My salvation hangs by a thread. I could do everything right and then just sin at the last moment and boom, I'm going to hell. What is grace? What is Christ's sacrifice? What is mercy? What are these things? It's turning it back into a works-based thing as opposed to a covenant relationship that has to do with the orientation of our heart. What is oil in the lamp? Hey, Lord, Lord, we did many wonderful things in your name, many good works. Depart from me, that work iniquity, I never knew you.
Exactly.
So this funny paradox that we cannot save ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
but if we do nothing, we won't be saved
Exactly.
because it's a relationship. We must engage. But so here's a verse. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is interesting. But what comes first, love or obedience? Because if we obey without love, what does it mean? But if we love first, we now obey as an extension of our love. But if I sit here and try to do everything right and follow the rules like the Pharisees did, and we all pick on the Pharisees because we have the benefit of hindsight. But tell you what, if we lived in that day, maybe we'd have a hard time picking the Pharisees. We'd think they were pretty righteous. A lot of people did.
Oh yeah.
And you know what? Maybe even they thought they were trying to be righteous. They were misguided. They'd kind of, in a sense, forsaken God, and they were trying to find the righteousness in the law, and they never could. But like, it's a little too easy for us to sound and slap our 21st century sort of lens and perspective with a full Bible and and centuries of like religious debate and things like that. Go, oh yeah, those guys were idiots. No, like, ease up for a sec here.
Yeah.
Put us back in that time, and we might not be all that different. They were trying to find the righteousness of what they did, um, and Jesus flipped it on its head and said, if it starts first with love, and it starts first with covenant love, and it starts first with I love you. Before
Yes.
you existed, I already loved you eternally. Now that just blows your mind. Like,
Oh yeah.
how do you even? But because that's too mind blowing to comprehend, now Jesus is going to come to earth and he's going to live as a man. He's going to experience pain, suffering, temptation, starvation, brutal torture, unjust murder, betrayal, everything, everything that a human could experience. He had to experience that so that nobody can go to Jesus and say, "You don't get it."
Yep.
Because here we live in this 21st century with all kinds, and we say, "Well, the world's different now. We have all this new technology." Blah blah. Humans are still the same.
Mhm.
We are still the same. We live in a more kind of overwhelming technology-driven world, absolutely, but we are still the same. You know.
Yeah. Well, um, we are running a little short on time. So,
Sorry, I
no,
get fired
no,
up.
that's absolutely fine. We had wonderful conversation. I love everything that we've talked about. Where can people find you?
If you enjoy my thoughts, you can find me on Substack. Wrestling with Truth
Mhm.
is where I go there. If you want to talk to me professionally, I have a website called freedomnutritioncoach.com, and you can find a way to communicate with me there. At this point in time, I have limited presence on social media. That's not to say I won't ever be there again, but I do. I've opted for a limited presence outside of Substack, and I'm even a little bit quiet there. But you can find a lot of my writings there, a lot of my wrestlings with these topics there. Um, Very welcome to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. To everybody listening, I will have all of those links in the show notes so that you can easily find Mr. McLernon and reach out to him. I thank you for joining us, and I hope that this has inspired you. Please remember to share this with others. Have a wonderful week, and God bless.